We're live on Facebook.
Okay. Alive.
Instagram's just catching up.
We're just going to wait for Instagram to go on. Hopefully you can hear us okay and see us okay. Let us know if you can't. But we're just going to give it 20 seconds.
Yeah, it's just starting. Nobody's on yet, really.
So
it's starting to come now.
Give it. We're just going to hold on a second or two to let people jump on. And then my father here will give some very insightful information. He looks a bit tired, so we'll see where this goes. It's been a week.
Let us know in the comments about the sound.
Okay, yeah, let us know if you can hear us okay, see us okay, anything like that. We have technical support in the form of Catherine behind the cameras. But either Wi-Fi, you never know when it's going to give you a surprise. So let us know if there are any issues at all. What do you think? Should we get going?
Yeah, you've got 40 on StreamYard and 73 on Instagram. So
let's do it. Let's go. Yeah. So why don't you do a bit of an intro? We haven't discussed this much, as you can see, so we haven't really done a lot of preparation. But look, it's great for you all to join us on our Fèis Day during Fèis week on Islay. It's been a busy week. The first time people have been back for Fèis for 3 years. So, you know, with the new visitor centre which we're sitting in, to see it full of people is fantastic. It's really exciting to see people really enjoying their week, and fortunately the weather's been kind. And shame you can't be here. Oh, well, you're really rubbing it in. Oh, yes. And it's a shame you can't be with us. And this is why we're doing this live now, so that you can feel a little bit part of what's going on at Kilchoman. You're not missing much, no? Not missing much. There's bands playing, there's juicy burgers being served, and lots of drams at the bar and cocktails. But apart from that, no, you're not missing much. So we've got 4 to taste. Yeah, including the Fèis. Yeah. So the order we were going to go in, and I think these are the order that's in the pack. So we're going to start with Lochgorn. We're then going to have the Madeira, and then the Casado, which you can correct us on our pronunciation if you like. We might listen to you. And then we're going to finish with the Fèis Ìle. Yes. Catherine will tell you not pronouncing
that. That's
that.
very good.
Fèis Ìle.
Very good.
Yeah, so we've got our token yacht here behind the camera. As you know, James and I can't really say that we're from Islay, but I've lived here for 18 years now, so I'm halfway there. Well, actually, you never get to become an Islay. You're God knows where you're going now. So why don't you tell people a bit about the what's been happening here in the last couple of years? Well, as you probably read and heard about, we've done a lot of improvements and upgrades at Kilchoman in the last few years. We've added a new still house in 2019. We've added a bigger malt floor and kiln area that's double the size. We do 2 4-ton batches, and we're about to extend the malt floor so we can do even more. I think my view is that we needed to do as much as our own barley that we could. As we increased production, that was to the detriment of our 100% Islay, our own barley. So it's important to drag that back a bit. So we will be able to, in the next 2 or 3 years, malt about 450 tonnes of barley. So that'll be a big change, because at the moment we're only doing about 250 tonnes. So that'll help hugely, and it's really our flagship expression. So we're maintaining that proportion of production, the amount of whiskey that we make as a proportion of 100% Islay. I'm not explaining myself very well, but it's always been roughly 20% of our total whiskey we make has been from our own barley, and that's about the same now. Yeah, and I think we've increased production considerably since we started, and that means that actually the 100% Islay dipped below 20% for a bit, so hopefully we're going to drag that back to about 20-25% of the total production in the near future. So that'll be good news for us. So the new production area means that 2 new stills, another mash tun, and 7 more washbacks. And now we're actually producing 24 hours, 7 days a week. So maximum production and should this year produce about 600,000 litres of alcohol. And when you consider in 2006 we only produced 50,000, it's a big increase, but it's much to do with sales and people's enjoyment for Kilchoman that we need to keep ahead of sales. And now I'm going to be told that sales and marketing are doing such a fantastic job that
pay rises, bonuses.
And so I have to look at my crystal ball gaze and come up with some more production. So that's what's happening here really. We've built more warehousing. To give you an idea, when we first started production we filled about 7 casks a week, equivalent of bourbon barrels, and now we're filling over 100 bourbon barrels a week, so that's a huge increase. And then we have to store them. So we store them all on site, so we have a program of building new warehouses every 2 yeys at the distillery. What is important for us is to mature everything here on site, and we intend to do that with everything that we do.
Good. And I should say, there's lots joining in from around the world. This is because Catherine's relaying messages to me. So if you have any questions, please do ask. We'll sort of like go through phases of drinking whiskies, answering questions, and we'll just see where we end up. Okay? Who needs structure?
No one. We certainly don't.
Yeah. But why don't we start off with Lockbourne?
Yeah, I think what you've got is 4 very interesting drams to taste today. The Lockbourne is the latest release of Lockbourne. I can't remember which one it is, but it's the latest. It's the latest one. We do one every year.
What year is it? 2022.
I know it's
been a long
edition. Which number? How many?
Okay, I've got it.
Sales marketing should know.
2012 was it you did your first one?
Okay, so since 2012, so it's the 10th
version of Lockbourne.
Yeah.
The 10th version. So, we've done a lot of them and they've been hugely popular. And, this is all about maturation in oloroso cherry butts. And to my mind, cherry butts give that balance of character that you're looking for in a cherry butts mature. Not easy to work with. They're all a little different. This is from the cask we selected for this range from 2013 down to 2007. So some of our older sherry casks in the warehouse. I think we try and tweak them each time we come up with a batting, and so they're not the same each time. And this one, I would say, doesn't have so much big hitting sherry influence as the last one, and certainly in 2018 it was a big sherry influence. I like the balance between the smoke and the peat and the sherry influence that you get from sherry butts and sherry casks. This is 22 casks, I believe, and 20 of those were first filled, and so they give a much more depth of character early on. And I think you get that sort of spicy richness and that peat smoke on the nose as well. I think it's really well rounded, and the balance between the slightly younger casks that we've used and the older ones really sort of make it come together really well. But I would suggest that this doesn't have quite so much hardened sherry influence as 2021.
Fair enough. I think that the sherry comes through more you drink it, almost. When I first had a nose, as I said, it's very fruity and sort of leathery,
Yeah.
But as you get into it, there's quite a lot of sort of earthy minerality.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely correct. And 46%, you really don't need a lot of water. Some people might feel they need a drop or two, but it's beautifully silky smooth. And I get the peel on the back of the palate as you swallow it. It really does come through on the back of the palate.
And you mentioned the range of age from like 8 years old minimum to 13, maybe 14 years old.
Yeah.
Is that that decision to take casks in those different years? Is that a necessity, or is that a deliberate choice that you go into the warehouse and choose from multiple vintages?
I think it's worked both ways. You've only got a limited number of casks, so you have to be careful about balancing how much you take out of the older stock. But also, the other thing we're trying to do is change the style of Lockbourne a little bit. So it's not going to be the same each time. Even though the average age of this one is pretty similar to 2021, I think it's got a a more subtle character to it than last year's.
Well, Andreas Schmidt,
Doesn't agree with me.
he agrees. Very balanced and mature lockdown version. So he also likes this edition. And then Pat Barrow says lovely Palmer violet sweetness. Is that herbal?
No, yeah.
I know.
I get that one as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
So
how does this compare to previous ones?
well, I think maturity-wise, it's got more maturity. So you would argue that it's more structured, I think, than maybe previous ones. But look, I think that they've all been fairly popular in their own way. Sherry tends to be easier to approach than bourbon cask maturation. But I think if I had to say, I would say that this is my favourite of the Longhorns because of its sort of balance of Kilchoman characteristics and the sherry influence, and not having too much sherry influence. I think that the mistake is to give too much sherry influence to it, and then you lose the balance.
Because you only, Longhorn is, it might not always only be the, Oloroso sherry, but certainly in the recent 6 or 8 editions, I think it's only.
How long have you worked for him?
Well, I think he puts some
No, we've never put hogsheads in it. No. It's always been plus.
Always been 500 litre.
Yeah, always been those. And Sane, that's where I use the hogsheads to give it a big hit of early on.
So Sane being a little bit younger, you want to get that colour, that
Colour and
flavour in that much sort of. I'd say it works very nicely, Sane, doesn't it? As a sort of combination, sort of big hitting sherry when it's maybe a little bit younger with the bourbon, which works very nicely.
They work much better at younger bottlings than they would do if we tried to do a lot warmer for 5 or 6 years of age. Yeah.
But actually, I remember you and Robin saying that the hogsheads, when you use them first time for Sane and then refill them, they're fantastic to 8-10 years old.
They're the best. If you had to choose a cask or hogshead, you'd fill it. Well, what we use it for is finishing.
Yeah.
Okay, so bourbon matured and then finish them for up to a year in Oloroso sherry hogsheads, and then we refill them with spirit, and those are excellent. And we started to use some of those.
And here we go. Andy Moritz. Andy Moritz. That's all one word. It's got better and better over time as the age increases.
Yeah, I think if you followed Longhorn since 2012, and you still got bottles of our first initial releases, and then you try it alongside this, I think what you come to the conclusion was that this just had the depth and the structure and the maturity that maybe previous ones haven't quite hit it on now, but they were much younger ones. And I think the last 2 or 3 have suddenly come together in a much more structured way. And I love this one.
And for whatever reason, I mean, sort of heavily peated Islay whiskies don't tend to be matured in sherry cask to any great extent. There's a huge amount more sort of Islay.
I've always felt that was a shame. I mean, some of the more lightly peated distilleries like Kilchoman have always done some fantastic sherry cask releases, some 17, 18-year-olds. And I think that's to do with the fact they don't use a lot of peat in their malting. But we are 50 parts per million, so you can argue that it's much more difficult to get the balance between a sort of salty, briny, peaty, smoky style of whiskey with the sherry, because they fight against each other and they don't actually combine that well sometimes. So we've got casks that Robin and I will be tasting that really are all over the place and they haven't come together. So it's just about patience.
Had a similar age. Sort of 8, 10, 15.
Yeah, but it tends to be, once they get to about 7 or 8 years of age, they start to come together really quite quickly. And so that's why it's been easier to pick the cask we need for that. We haven't been filling as much sherry as we should have done, but then we didn't realise sales were going the way they have. So we've now concentrated on filling bourbon and sherry for last year and this year, so we get that on track in terms of what we're going around.
And in terms of the casks that being filled, what kind of proportion? I know it's just speaking about bourbon and sherry, because that's the bulk of what we fill, isn't it? But how many bourbon barrels are we filling compared to sherry casks?
Number-wise, we're filling about 60 to 65% into bourbon.
That's lower than it used to be, isn't it?
Yes, and then more sherry.
Yeah, it's a little bit. But I guess it's more bourbon barrels than the other half. but we're just, as a proportion of the sherry.
Yeah, we've just moved the sherry influence up a bit because I think it's worked really well. Very, very popular. Lockwood was always popular. Sanning is also proved hugely popular. We didn't think that would be the case when we set out the commission. They've matured really well, and so you react as you go on with releases as to what the public are enjoying.
Well done.
Good, I got through that one anyway.
Yeah. You'll be asleep by the end, maybe. It's only in the middle of the day.
It's done 6 cask shit. This was
Well, it's all right for some. He only arrived last night.
So good to see it. So there's a few comments going in. Brian Ford. Do you remember Brian? Brian from the US.
Oh yeah, okay, so that.
He says it explodes with flavour. And Thomas Horn, our sherry whiskies are going to become more of a rarity as the casks become harder to get.
Well, we've struck up a very good relationship with our supplier, Miguel Martin, who's a fantastic guy who knows his wood inside out. And we haven't been told there's going to be a problem, and we're getting the wood we want. I mean, clearly there has been an issue with, very old, mature butts, and now we've had to have sort of more seasoned casks than others. And that changes the style and character, but we should be okay. I mean, prices are always rising. There's pressure just because there's so many more distilleries in the world who want casks.
Yeah. Good. So any more comments about Lockwood? Keep them coming. We'll sort of rattle through them a bit later on. But we're going to taste the Madeira now, which was the Lockwood. I should say Lockwood. That was the 2022 edition. It was launched a couple of weeks ago, and it's available kind of in Europe and various other areas. But if you haven't seen it on the shelves, then it will be kind of on the way. We made it available, I think, in the middle of May. So it's on the way, and it's very good. The Madeira was one which we intended to release last year.
We intended to release this in October, I believe, and then we had a shortage of glass, and we had to postpone the release until March, I think, of this year. Experimental cask types has always been something we've enjoyed doing here at Kilchoman, and they've worked pretty well. I think fortified wine casks tend to work a bit better. They're a bit stronger flavour, seems to marry better with our spirit, whereas wine flavours, much less alcohol strength, they tend not to be quite so structured as fortified wine. So we've sort of moved a bit towards fortified wine cask types, and look, it seems to have worked pretty damn well. I mean, with everything that we tried. Madeira cask matured, it's fully matured for over 5 years, it's not long. And
you don't get any of the youth on the nose. Very, very fruity.
And full, and it's extraordinarily well. A lot of these you tend to feel that it's missing something, but this got everything after 5 years. I just felt it was ready, and that's why we went with it. The colour is that sort of not ready brick, it's sort of rosé colour almost, but it's it's a completely different style.
And this is only in Madeira cask. First filled Madeira cask.
First filled Madeira cask. This is the second Madeira release, I believe, that we've done. We've done one 3 years late, in back 2014, and then this is the second one we've done. And I think it worked very well. Some people absolutely love it, and maybe some other people would prefer something that was tried and tested and love a bourbon or a sherry. But for those who enjoyed Kilchoman in a different guise, this is it. And I think you get sort of stone fruits in this. Strong flavours are coming through all the time.
It's a little bit. It's a little drier than I expected on the palate. So I remember the previous one. I remember describing it as being quite tart. Yeah. Like sherry. The Madeira being sort of like fruity tart kind of.
It doesn't give me too much of a sort of dry in the mouth. I mean, it's maybe drier than most. It doesn't have that sweet spot that you're looking for, and it's probably not as open maybe or full as good flavour. 50% is bottlette, and and I can't remember how many bottles this was. It was 17,000. So a fair number. I think it's still available in most countries, and I love the fact that it's worked well, but it's different in many respects. And I think it's important that we showcase Kilchoman in different lights, and this is certainly doing that with this Madeira class.
I tell people quite a lot that the sort of my feeling is that the real sort of citrus fruitiness that we have in our spirit, really, as well as the kind of earthy peat, lends itself to any number of sort of, you've got the citrus, you've got the saltiness, and then almost any class type, those two kind of pillars really come through because they're quite strong, you know. So I think with all the experimentation we've done, you have to really go some ways that drown out that.
No, I think that's right. And you always seem to be that sort of comes through on all these class types.
Any other sort of 4 or 5 wines that you've got your eye on?
Well, we've done Marsala, we've done Pinot de Chevron, we've done Cognac, we've done Calvados, and to be honest, they're all very different, but have worked in their own way. And some work better as finishes. I think there's no doubt. And you can only really tell when you actually use these casks and determine how they're going to work, because you don't know until you use them.
Which are the ones you think are better as finishes?
Well, we know that the sweet white wine from Bordeaux Sauterne, I believe works better as a finish, because there's too much power and sweetness and honey flavours coming through from the Sauterne cask to really give it a structure, and it loses some of that backbone that you're looking for. And the distillery characteristics get completely smothered in those rich, sweet, sticky Sauterne flavours. So, you know, as a finish, I think it works well for 6 to 8 months. And so any white wine that is sort of Chardonnay style would be a finish, and most wines would be a finish. Whereas I think Madeira, Port, Cognac, Calvados, they tend to work well as full finishes. And Armagnac we feel as well, full finishes. I think full maturation, yeah.
So Thomas Horner said beautiful floral sweetness on the nose, balance and colour is fantastic. And then Pat Barrow again said Anthony was brutally and refreshingly honest about the Madeira expression at a tasting in 2024 Fèis. This is a cracker. I think you must have been quite rude about the Madeira. Well, you would have selected it, so it's strange that you selected it and then slated it.
No, I was honest in the fact that I felt it was maybe still a bit young, but we felt that we should release it. I think it's important to get people's opinions on these things. So going to tastings, I think we've missed going to tastings and getting people's opinion. You want people to be honest with you, and then you can change tack if you need to.
So when people are telling you, today, for example, Anthony, you shouldn't have bottled this as a 16-year-old, you should have left it for 2 more years and it would have been fantastic. I say, well, let's use the Madeira example. You shouldn't have bottled this at 5 years old, you should have left it for another couple of years.
I think the argument is that we could have left it for another 2 years. But I felt it was mature enough to release it and to get people's opinions. So I'm interested to get a comment that this is a lot better than the previous one we did, and at 5 years of age, it's well balanced. But I think what people have to realise is that we try and put out releases that we think work, but we like to innovate and take ourselves out of our comfort zone, and that's important. And this is outside our comfort zone in many respects, because we don't know how it's going to behave.
It's interesting doing the Lochborn and the Madeira, because the Lochborn is an expression that's kind of crafted over many years. We know what we're doing, we know the cast, how the cast behave, we know the combination of cast and everything else. With the Madeira, it's a bit of a sort of, not a shot in the dark, but say you had filled 40 casts every year, you would then be able to maybe put it together, more flexibility to put it together and construct it.
Well, I think what people have to realise is that every single batch of experimental casts you get won't behave in the same way.
Yeah.
So whereas bourbon will always behave in the same way, and sherry to a certain extent, these experimental casts don't. So every batch will differ. It'll come from a different vineyard or chateau, and it won't be the same.
And also, yeah, Pat was also asking, do you know the Madeira house?
No, I don't, I'm afraid. We buy our Madeira and our broadcast up until now from Cooperage in Portugal, DS, and they seem very reticent to give us all the information we're looking for.
They think you'll just go straight to them and say,
Yeah.
hey, cut out the middleman. So
Yeah,
they're,
I think so.
and Dwayne James Large, yeah, that's the had a Madeira here at the distillery in April, tasting with Sharon. He said it was wonderful. Would you consider, this is a completely unrelated question, would you consider a cask strength Sane or not warm?
Yeah, man, I think everyone knows I'm a fan of cask strength whiskies, and if we could bottle more of them, we would. But the problem is, you're dipping too much into your stock, and we want to do a fully mature, cask mature core expression at some point. And this is what did I say?
You want to do a cask strength?
Cask strength. And we hope to be able to do that. We've done one limited release, original cask strength, which went down really well with people. And of course we do the single cask, and I'm a huge fan of cask strength whiskies, but to share enough of the whiskey around, and to get the price point at a sensible price point, reducing has to be the way you go, but we will do more cask strength whiskies.
In the future, with us filling a higher proportion of sherry casks, that will make more sherry, stock available to you. But at the moment we're really restricted to, Sane and Loch Warm. We don't make lots of sherry silver casks.
So in time. Well, I think the question being, we haven't answered the question yet, but I think Sane and Loch Warm cask strength. Love to be able to do that, but we don't have the stock. And Sanig has proved more popular than we imagined, and therefore we're sort of playing catch up a bit and with our stock profile, and it's difficult for us to do anything with cask strength for at least 4 or 5 years.
Apparently there's a bit of chat about the mezcal releases.
Oh, yeah.
And people have enjoyed them. Will we see a mezcal release as a limited edition?
Yeah, not just a single cask. No, we've filled quite a few mezcal and tequila casks, and because they work so well as finishes, and we've actually filled. We've got another load coming in a few weeks' time, and we hope to take those out full maturation, tequila and mezcal. I think the mezcal actually is the most interesting because it has that smoky character, which is completely different to our smoky character.
And the two actually, you keep. I kind of assumed you maybe lose one smokiness would override the other, but actually the two, you could really see the mezcal smokiness and the Kilchoman smokiness.
And it's really interesting, the mezcal finish, and we've got, obviously in the shop at the moment, we've got a mezcal finish, bourbon cask.
You can't buy that either, sorry about that.
You can't. We have to make a trip over here. Yeah. But I think have we done any for distributors?
Yeah, we've done a few, yeah. I think we filled 20.
And we've sold those to distributors around the world.
So they kind of be out and about. As well. But I think, are you just buying mezcal casks now? Are you buying tequila as well?
No, we bought tequila as well, but we bought more mezcal because we think it complements our style a bit better.
And do you think all that goes together? Or do you think
I think it's quite important to keep them separate. I think tequila and mezcal is on everyone's lips as spirits at a certain moment, and lots of chat about tequila in Europe now. It's very, very popular, whereas in America it's been popular for a number of years. I think it helps that you have a name that people are familiar with on your label, and you're finishing it in a particular style of class that people want to try.
I mean, people are trying it today, and they don't. I think probably most of them have never tried mezcal, but they're really enjoying it. Yeah. Good. And John Bourne is hoping for a rum cask release soon.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had so much success with rum casks.
Certainly not finishes.
No, and I think that we need to sort of work on that a bit. I think when they've been used for rum, a lot of the flavours have eked out of these casks, and when you're looking for these banana characteristics, you know, sort of fruity banana, something I always get, tropical fruit characteristic, and we've been lacking in the cask review, so we've been disappointed so far, but we filled some more casks, which we've got from Plantation, and we work reasonably close with Alexander Gabriel.
Do you know where? Because Plantation obviously got
well, no, I mean, I think that's not the problem. I don't think you know Alexander. But we have done a few things with Alexander, and I'm a great fan. Alexander.
That sounds like Alexander.
Alexander. What did I say? Sandy. Sandy.
Okay. Good. Okay, and then so should we tell them about the next one? So how do you Catherine, who no one ever sees, because Catherine does all social media, but she doesn't like to be in front of the camera. So she's a Spanish speaker, and she says that we're saying it wrong.
We don't. Casado.
I didn't picture that.
And anyway, this was something I was quite keen to do, and I was offered some red wine casks. Not one we medium charring and one a light charring, and 6,000 litre vats, and then
sort of give people a picture.
So
kind of like the size of
yeah, they're as high as the window behind us here. Big round vats, and I decided we'd do a marriage of our bourbon matured. I think it was 2014 bourbon barrels, 38 of them. We then decanted into these vats, wine vats, about 20 months ago, and bit by bit they've started to come together. I would say the medium char vat was doing better than the lighter char, but I just wanted to see the comparison to see which would work best. So these are now we'll be looking. We're carrying on maturing them in these vats for the next couple of months, and then we'll be bottling them off release in September. And we believe it's just coming together now. It's 2 years married, so that's quite a long time. But these are big vats, so it takes a while for those flavours to sort of knit together.
So 6 years of bourbon barrels, and then 2 years.
No, I think yes, that's right. 6 years of bourbon and 2 years in these Castado.
Yes. We're going to be insulting all sorts of people today.
Casado, for those
So it is 6 years of bourbon, 2 years in these vats, and the reason it's called Casado
is because Casado in Spanish is
Portuguese.
It's the same.
Okay,
It's just a different
it's
pronunciation.
it's translated into marriage. So we thought it was very apt to call it marriage because it is a marriage of our bourbon matured 6 years into these red wine vats. And it's just fun. It's just a fun experiment. It might have gone wrong, but it's not gone wrong. We just have to have a lot of patience. We have to rummage them quite regularly because they're quite large to make sure that we're getting it all married together properly. So every 2 or 3 weeks, Robin will rummage the vats to make sure they're coming together. And look,
This is cask strength as well.
yeah, this is cask strength. So this is 59.2, which is quite interesting actually. I was, because most of our 7-year-old or 8-year-old spirit will be down at 56%, so it's reasonably high.
And these are kind of, these Portuguese red wine vats, and you recharge. I mean, that's basically a bigger version of the SDR cask, isn't it?
It is in a way. On the nose, I get sort of summer fruit character.
Yeah.
Very light, very spicy, and a bit spicy. And definitely on the palate, the spice is really coming through, big time. And yeah, it's strong. It needs a bit of water.
Yeah, no, it does actually. And it improves
A few drops of water.
the fruitiness.
But I'm really delighted with this because it really is coming together. I mean, 6 months ago, Robin and I looked at it and we go, oh Christ, that's not really where we wanted to be. But actually, in the last 6 months, it's really come together.
Yeah. Because I know we'd sort of penciled it in, haven't we? We said we were either going to do a port cask, limited edition, or the Casado.
So
Depending on which one.
yeah, kind of But that's worked really well, and I actually prefer them when they're quite young. You know, they don't have a huge amount of hit from the red wine cask, and it's just a sort of a good balance. But you want your influences coming from the car, your own spirit that comes through a bit stronger than what we finished with.
And of course, you know, you couldn't build these with spirit, could you? Because they're too big to count as a maturing cask.
So that's not allowed.
So will this either be released to cask strength?
No, it's going to be released at 46. I think
we wanted to, but also it's better at that level.
I think it's better than I think. I mean, 59 would have been too strong, I felt, and to be honest, we wanted as many people around the world we wanted to share this with as many people as we could. So reducing the 46, it won't affect the character and style, you can take it at 46%, so we're quite happy with it.
And Hans-Peter Newman, who's a big fan. My Hans.
My hands.
He's asking if it's a good combination of both fats.
Yeah, it's bad. I just wanted to experiment with the charring levels to see which one would work best. So the next time we might do medium charring on both, so that we get a better.
So you're going to get more fats, or you
No, I'm going to send them back different recharge.
Will they mature some red wine in them again?
We'll see. I mean, I'll talk to the cooperage and see what we can do. But I'm interested to carry on the experiment. But I think that's interesting and it's worked well. And as for red wine, you know, the recharring, decharring, recharring is better than just taking the red wine cask without any work on it. Okay? It just takes away some of those tannins that dry out your mouth and cause dryness.
We did do a red wine maturation, which was fortunately red wine, isn't it? Yeah, that was probably a little bit better. And question: will there be another SDR release?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we like that release a lot. I think you know, that was something that Jim Swan had come up with, this idea of shave taste and recharge. It was about giving life back to some wine casks that we didn't want all of that flavour of the tannins coming from their cask. So decharring them and then recharring them with either heavy or medium or light charring and toasting them was something that he came up with. Now it's hugely popular for maturing single malt whiskey.
Yeah, a lot of his distilleries he consulted on.
Yes, he knows them, and they've worked really well for us. And at one point we thought we might do a core expression as SDR, and we haven't decided whether we're going to do that or not, but we've got plenty of casks in the road.
We've got a good number of sort of what, like the mid, so 2014 to
16, 17,
yeah, we've got a lot of casks in there.
Yeah.
So regardless, at some point there'll be a fair
Absolutely.
This actually gets fruitier. You know, often things get killing gets some earthier, but actually gets fruitier as well.
That's I'm pleased that's come together as well as it has. It's quite light in colour. I mean, it's not a deep, rich colour. You'd expect maybe a little bit more sort of red bricky, similar to Madeira, but it hasn't. That hasn't bad at all.
Good. And I should say, if people are watching this not live, then please just probably direct message us. Yeah. So send us a message if you have any questions, and we'll get back to you. It won't be quite as instant as this, but if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask, we're always ready to answer them.
Good.
You'll probably be napping at that point. Right. Well, then should we move on to the kind of main event?
Yeah. I mean,
you've only got a little one, so savor it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, being able to release our oldest, release we've ever done, the Kilchoman, it's pretty special when it comes around. Something of 16 years of age, it seems we've been at this for a lifetime, Kilchoman. But I did a tasting earlier today with a 10-year-old single cask, the first of 2010, and also a single cask from the similar casks that we've used for Fèis, and they were very different. And what I was trying to point out is that 10 years of age, the single cask, which, as I felt, was just absolutely superb. It was right for bottling and had the right balance between our characteristics and not too much caramel and butterscotch or sweetness and fullness. And then you compared it with the Fèis release. And I think, there's no doubt that the Fèis release that we've done, 5 bourbon barrels from early 2006, between January and April 2006. 1 or 2 of those casks didn't have as much in them because they were private casks that the individual took 20 or 30 bottles from, or maybe more, and we then bought the rest back in bulk. So 865 bottles in total, at a strength of 52.1. Look, I mean, I think the colour gives away, it's a lovely rich colour for bourbon mature, and just wonderfully round and floral and sweet, and some of those characteristics of the bourbon cask are really coming through big time now in terms of the sort of caramel and butterscotch notes.
I mean, well, I agree with you. I don't want to see it. But like, there's loads of lemon. Loads of lemon. And then, when I first made it, loads of like lemon curd. And then underneath that, lots of sort of fresh tropical fruity thing. I didn't actually get nearly as much caramel. No, I was expecting, because these are fresh bourbon.
I think what I'm trying to say is that if for Islay whiskey, it's whether you want to get the balance from the cask influence and the smoky peaty character and the saltiness and the wininess that you get from Islay style of whiskey. So as they mature for longer in the cask, they're going to lose some of that sort of those characters that you become so familiar with all single malts from Islay. So all I'm saying is that our whiskies mature maybe a little bit quicker than others, and then this 16-year-old is a different animal to a certain extent. But it's a wonderfully smooth, rounded, mature Kilchoman, which we're absolutely thrilled with because it showcases what we've achieved over these 16 years of distillery.
So apparently you get the sort of citrusiness, you get the floralness, and then it just comes through the bourbon barrel, it goes through. It's quite, it really does, it's gentle.
Layers and layers of but I don't get that sort of saltiness or character because I think the maturation is in the cask is maybe just taken that away a bit, but it's beautifully balanced. And 52, you don't need any water in that. And they're trying it with us, and I hopefully they'll agree that it's wonderfully balanced. And
you have to agree.
You don't have to agree. You don't have to agree.
No. Give us your comments. Hopefully you are enjoying it. I think it's fantastic. I've listened to, because this is the first time, well, today was the first time I tasted it, and I've listened to your sort of tasting notes on and stuff. And I thought it was going to be very, very little smoke to it at all, but it still has quite a sort of backbone of Islay to it.
It does, absolutely. Maybe I'm pushing this sort of age thing too much, but I don't mind saying I prefer a little bit of the more sort of saltiness to it. But look, you can't argue with something at this age and balance, and at 52.1%, you wouldn't know that. There's no alcohol burn or prickle at the back of the palate. There's nothing. It's beautifully smooth, and it really is a testament to everybody who's worked so hard to achieve something like this.
Who are they doing? Other than you. You want to give credit? To anyone?
Just me, really, because no one else is here. Robin actually 2010. So in 2006, it was your mother and I, Mark and Rennie, Paul and Lawson. I think there's about 6 of us working here. I think it's a testament. I raise a glass to Jim Swan, who's really my guiding light in terms of getting me where I have got to. And it's a great shame he's not here to share and enjoy what he achieved for us in terms of the whole design and build and making sure I feel the best quality wood, because without him to guide me, we wouldn't have got here. So, here's to Jim, and it's a testament to his skill that we were able to release a single malt of this quality.
And it must be quite strange sitting here, 16 years later. I remember, I think 2006 was the first time we had a Fèis.
No?
Was it 2005 you had the plan?
No, 2004. 2004 we had a marquee out there and the whole place was building site. 2005 we had a proper Fèis there. So we've had, this is our 17th year in terms of facials. But look, I mean, you can't really see, but the crowd here today is the biggest crowd we've ever had at our open day. And it's exciting that so many people have wanted to come to Islay. I think after 3 years, when they weren't able to make it over, I think we were always expecting a big turnout for this festival, and it hasn't disappointed. I mean, we've had huge crowds of people here all day, and unfortunately they've all enjoyed it. And the weather stayed kind to us, because for the last 3 Fèis in 2017, 18 and 19, it rained. So it's nice that it's remained.
But this is the worst day of the week. Everyone else is getting sunshine.
Yeah, but we
drives everyone inside.
Yeah, it's good. Drives everyone inside, and look, having the space we've got in the visitor centre, I'm not sure if any of you have been able to get over to visit, but do try and come and see us, because our visitor centre is special, and we've made a big space now.
And if you're wondering where my father's office is, if you want to just go and say hello, what you do, walk down towards the old visitor centre. There's some windows on the left there. Just go up, knock on the window. He's just inside there. You happy to come out and say hello? He does like to snooze between just after lunch.
Yeah, but it's very difficult to snooze now because it's a bit of a corridor.
1 to 2 o'clock is snoozing time.
Yeah, I do tend to have a bit of shut like that.
You're a bit past time on your snoozing. Maybe I'll just skip it today. So yeah, there are 1 or 2 more questions. I think people. I saw a comment saying very buttery and velvety.
Yeah.
That's
buttery and
that was Thomas Moore who was saying that.
Butterscotch. I mean, I think, but it still has those characters, as James was saying, it still has that sort of lemon, certainly on the nose, I think, those lemon and citrus notes are still there. So it's got it all going on in this dram, and I think, hopefully in the future we'll be able to put more of these releases out.
Is that the plan?
It will be, but
for older.
Older, but we're going to have to take our time doing that, because obviously in 2006 we filled 50,000 litres of alcohol in 2006. We sold private casks and we got some of those back. So when you consider we produced 50,000 litres in 2006 and now we're producing 600,000, and we've been selling since 2009, and so we've got to wait a bit to balance the amount of stock that we have to work. So it's a good thing I'm in charge of the warehousing and what we bottle. Otherwise, sales and marketing would bottle everything we have. And then we wouldn't have anything to show.
Guiding hand.
Yeah, another guiding hand. It's very important.
Yes. And you're not snoozing.
And we hope people enjoy our whiskey rather than putting it in their cupboard and allowing it to gather dust.
Well, they won't get a chance here. Not much point putting that in your cupboard.
Enjoy it.
We are very sad that we can't, I appreciate that. It's probably a lot of people who are quite frustrated they can't get their hands on a bottle of Fèis this year. I mean, we do want to, we have made it available online for the last 2 years, but, certainly something like this we wouldn't be able to do on a bigger scale than what we're doing.
No, and I mean, I'm quite old-fashioned. And I like the fact that actually the Fèis bottling is for those who make the effort to come to us on our open day, and that is special to them, and they can buy a bottle from the distillery. And I know that everybody else around the world who can't get here would love to get a bottle. I'm of a believer that that should be kept for the people.
You should make them read out a small statement when they buy every bottle. Or we can open every bottle for them.
Yeah.
How about that? Next year we'll
I think most people know what I mean, because I think we're producing whiskey because we love it and we want people to enjoy it. And there is a secondary market out there now, and hopefully not too many of the Fèis things will appear online in the next 24 hours.
Fingers crossed. But yeah, any more questions at all, please fire them in. I think we're probably, we've run through the 4 whiskies.
Yes.
The old man needs a snooze. So, have you got any more tastings today? Or?
No, this is my final. I can go and enjoy a burger now.
Yeah.
One of Simon Turnbull's burgers, which has become very, very famous for being raw.
If you're thinking about coming next year, then please do look into it. I mean, and make sure you're here for when our day is. That goes without saying. We've got lots going on the Fèis. We're kind of a bit of a, throw open the doors and people kind of look around as much as they like. So there's the malt floor, Derek sort of showing people how we go through the malting process. In the still house, we're pouring some drams, and I think we're back in production this afternoon. So you can see the stills, up and running. The warehouses are open. We're doing tastings and masterclasses, and all sorts. So if you are thinking about coming to Fèis, or if you're just thinking about coming to Islay, I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's a great place to visit.
So thanks very much for joining us. It's great to see you, and I hope you enjoyed the selection of drams, especially the Fèis. At least you've got to try it, at least. And you now know what to expect from Kilchoman going forward. So thanks very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the day. And
what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the cameras and give you. This is a little pocket of Wi-Fi. But out there, who knows when we'll lose connection. But just to show you what's going on, and at some point we'll lose connection.
I'll say goodbye.
Say goodbye. He's off for a snooze. So we'll show you what's going on.
There we go.
Bye.
Yeah.